Hello students. Today we are going to discuss one another concept after the concept of correlation, and that's known as the regression lines. The concept of regression lines, that means the in this topic we have to see that what's difference between the correlation and the regression lines. So as it is clear by its name, that's the we are going to discuss the regression lines. So it is clear by its name that these are the lines, but beyond its name, regression lines are not just lines. Regression lines maybe also uh, the regression curve. That's the general term is regression curve, but the specific term is here regression lines. That means the if we get finally the um, regression lines, then it may be regression curve of any of the types. That means it may be the line, that means the straight line, and that may be the parabola, that may be the cubic, that may be the biquadratic also, etc., etc. But in our in your level, that means the btech, specific for btech, that is the topic of study, that of the regression lines. Okay, so we are going to discuss the concept of regression lines. So what is regression line and how it is different than correlation? Okay, so in the topic of correlation, we have discussed that the correlation is a particular type of relation between two specific variables. If we say the two variables now, that means the correlation is a particular mathematical value. Okay, so that's the correlation coefficient. That was correlation coefficient we have found in the previous lectures, and today we are going to see that's what's the regression line. So the main difference here than correlation in regression line is regression lines depends on the two variables also, like as the correlation. But here what is the difference is in the discussion of regression line there are two different variables in which one variable is dependent and another is independent. Okay, if we generalize this thing, then we get the more than two variables. That means there may be three variables also. So two are independent and one dependent. If we generalize further, then three independent variable and one dependent variable, and etc. That means why this concept is important uh, in statistics. You can think it philosophically that the in our general life we see there there are two types of scenes here. One in which we have to see some comparative study. Okay, so that is related by correlation. What's the correlation between these two? That means what's the relation between two variables? That goes for comparative study. Okay, another is that is the dependency. That means how dependent one variable in another. Okay, so that is the indicator of regression line. And what's the relation? That is the correlation. And what's the dependency? That is the regression line. Okay, so this is the fundamental difference between these two conditions, these two concepts. If you see here examples, that means if we take examples like if we go for correlation. Okay, so if there are two students, the marks of one student and marks of another student, while these marks of one student is not um, dependent on another student, but we want to test, if we want to test the intelligence, that what's the correlation between the marks of these two students, then we go for correlation. Okay. Similarly, if we take another example of correlation, that means what's the income of celebrities. If we take two celebrities, and what's the income of those, so what is the correlation between the incomes of those two celebrities, we can find it by the concept, by the use of correlation. Okay. uh, if we have data for these two celebrities incomes, and then we find the correlation, okay, then we can find. In another hand, that if we take the concept of regression, then what it comes from the natural examples. If we see the, if we see one any type of concept, that in which, in type of example in which there is a dependency of one thing uh, is clear on the many different things, then we describe it regression line. That means suppose uh, if the production of crops in the uh, in the farming by farmer. So what's the there are here we see there are many types of many things on which the farming depends, agriculture depends. That is, one thing is rainfall, another thing is the another thing is the fertilizers, another thing is the fertility of the land. So there are many things. So here the production depends on many things. So here that's the case in which we find the regression line. Okay. So this is the philosophical difference between these two concepts. Similarly, if you take another condition, another situation when we can find the regression, actually regression lines are the are very important concepts in the study of statistics. That which that measures the concept, that measures the value of the dependent variable uh, in terms of independent variable, when we want to find the value of dependent variable, particularly at a particular stage, in particular stage. Okay. So that's the philosophy of these two concepts, and in next class we will discuss some examples on the concept of regression line, and then we proceed further. Okay.